What's going on, guys? Dan from SSG bringing you another Edison format deck profile. This time I'm profiling my Royal Tribute Turbo deck. A very awesome deck I've been working on off and on for a while, and let's get right into it. We have the full 3 copies of Gravekeeper's Commandant. Card's really strong. It's just going to be able to be a 2100 beater when we already have Necro Valley, which is very good, but it also can go search the Necro Valley, which is very consistent, and thinning out the deck is exactly what we want to be doing, as we are pretty much a combo aggro deck. We want to try and combo Necro Valley with Royal Tribute and then kill our opponent. Speaking of killing our opponent, we have Ancient Gear monsters in this deck, so we have 3 copies of Ancient Gear Beast. I like this one quite a bit because we are going to be able to easily normal summon this card right into play off of our Gear Town, and this card is very good. It kind of makes the opposing Raikos completely irrelevant, kind of cuts off our opponent resources, and just kills our opponent in a timely manner. And 2000 is a very strong stat line, and I think this is just one of the better aggro cards in the format, so very strong. We have 3 copies of Ancient Gear Beast. We then go to 2 copies of Galvatron Dragon. Of course, this card is going to be our main win condition. We want to resolve a Royal Tribute, and then we want to have this card already in play, essentially, and just clocking our opponent, not giving them any time to recover from their card disadvantage. And very good card, only 2 copies. We then have 2 copies of Warrior Lady. There are some problematic cards. If they do come down, we want to be able to deal with them, and we want removal in this deck. But this card, of course, sort of classifies itself as a removal card as well as a creature that can actually win the game, and that's really important for this deck strategy. 2 copies of DD Warrior Lady. The card is just excellent in the format, but having it be a monster and a removal piece of removal in this deck is very, very important. Then we have a couple of flex slots here. We just want win conditions and cards that do have effects, and I have 1 copy of Primaterial Dragon. Card's really good. We can summon it off of our Mausoleum that we play, and it just protects itself, and it can be a win condition. It's very easy to win the game off of this card once we have a resolved Royal Tribute, and it's just going to protect itself and not let the opponent kind of get your win condition off the board. Solid card. I think it's just one of, like, it's not the best card, but I think it does what it needs to do, and yeah, it's one of our flex cards here. I then opt to play 1 copy of Dark Dust Spirit. I like this card quite a bit in combination with Mausoleum, paying 1,000 life points to wipe the opponent's board, and then just getting in for 22. Do it again next turn. Really strong. A lot of the, you can't really play Monarchs in these kind of slots because they require to be Tribute summoned, but this guy works with the Mausoleum, so being able to come down, wipe the board, very, very powerful, and I like this card just quite a bit in the format in general. Only 12 monsters, so we have a very short monster count because we're playing Royal Tribute. We have a full 3 copies of Necro Valley. Of course, we just want to be as consistent as possible with the combo. I think Royal Tribute is just a game-winning card, and being able to have Necro Valley plus Commandant is also a legit win condition. So 3 Necro Valleys, and then of course all 3 copies of Royal Tribute. Card's just bananas. I mean, the card just wins games. Turn 1 is just insane with this card, but it's just so much value. We're playing so few monsters that it's at least going to be a 1-for-1 minimum with our opponent. More likely we're going to hit 2 or 3 cards out of their opponent's hand, and then we can just win with like a big Galvatron Dragon. Card's just excellent. It just does exactly what you want it to do, and yeah, Royal Tribute, very powerful card in the format. We then have all 3 copies of Gear Town. Again, card's unbelievable. This card is like silently one of the best cards in the format. Just a 3k special summon that can't be interacted with like Deep Prison or Mirror Force is just kind of insane. And I just think that this is a very fast card. It is just very powerful. Of course, is great in combination with Necro Valley. Even as a floodgate, if you set this, drop Galvatron Dragon into play after you set your Necro Valley, flip it over, your opponent has to face down a 3000 Beat Stick and Necro Valley in play. That can be really hard for a lot of decks to deal with. You don't really need the full combo of Royal Tribute to actually do some work against your opponent. This card also just being able to normal summon Ancient Gear Beast is one of the best modes on this card. Very, very powerful card, and I like it quite a bit. It also just gives us more monsters that aren't monsters in our deck, which is very good. 2 copies of Mausoleum. You could go down to 1 on this. I think 2 might be a little bit overkill because your monster count is so low, but you just got to be able to get those monsters out of hand, and I think this card just makes sure that you can do that. Very strong card. It's one of my favorite cards in the format to build around. I think it's just very unique, and there's a deep card pool of Tribute summon monsters that you can play, so awesome card. 2 copies for now. And then we have all 3 copies of Terraforming. This card's really strong. I mean, it just gives us so much flexibility in what we want to do. We can just make huge pushes in a control deck with multiple copies of Gear Town. We can, of course, search our Necro Valley if we need it. We have 9 copies of Necro Valley at this point in our deck. Very, very consistent on that half of the combo. And then we also can just go get Mausoleum if we're kind of like have a bunch of monsters in hand that we need to like put into play. So very good utility here. And the most important part about this deck is this card is that it thins the deck out, which is just really strong. Being able to search cards off of Terraforming, search cards off of Commandant, very strong, thin deck. Try and get to that Royal Tribute. And speaking of trying to get to cards, 3 copies of Upstart. We don't care about their life total. We just want to get Royal Tribute turn 1 as often as possible, and Upstart is just going to help us do that. We have big beaters that can actually kill the opponent, so we don't really care about the life points at all. Onto some traps. 2 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole. We are just a control deck, so we're going to play some trap cards. Sometimes we don't need to win with just Royal Tribute. We want to be able to drop a 3k into play, maybe a DD Warrior lady next to it, and just win the game off some removal. So 2 copies of the Bottomless Trap Hole to do that. 2 copies of Deep Prison, same thing, just 1-for-1 removal, be able to make our big monsters relevant. We then have 1 copy of Mirror Force, very strong. We have Solemn Judgment, of course, just being able to protect our boards once we resolve some sort of big combo or like a big 2 push of like 2 Galvatron Dragons, really important there. 1 copy of Dark Bribe. I like this card at protecting our back rows. I think just Dark Bribe can seal games once we do resolve a Royal Tribute. The extra card doesn't really matter. They're down so many cards and they're drawing irrelevant cards. So very, very strong here. Sort of in the same mode, protecting our stuff, is Starlight Road. I kind of like this ratio quite a bit of Starlight Road plus Dark Bribe. They just do a lot of work. They do similar things but are flexible in their own nature. And having a win condition come out of the extra deck with Starlight Road is very strong as well. Of course, we're playing a low monster count, but this gives us another monster and basically seals the game with our deck strategy. So the 1 Starlight Road there. And we have 1 copy of Royal Oppression. I don't want to go too like insane on this card. I think 1 is fine. You just kind of like, you have a lot of ways to control the game in this deck, and this is just kind of like another floodgate. I think Necro Valley is going to do most of the work with the Galvatron in play. This card also sort of conflicts with Galvatron Dragon, not being able to special summon off of your Gear Town. So 1 oppression in the main, I think it's fine at 1. You could definitely go up to 2, go way controlling, and I understand that sort of point of view, but I like to just run 1. We then have, would not be an SSG profile without the 1 copy of Trap Dust Shoot. Really strong in this deck. We want to be, it's a 4th hand destruction spell, right? We have the 3 Royal Tributes, we have the 1 Trap Dust Shoot, and that's exactly what we want to do, right? We just want to hit the hand and then just win the game with big monsters, and that's exactly what this card does. We're going to be able to flip this over and just win a high percentage of the games that we do. Same thing with Royal Tribute. We want to turn 1 these cards and just get in and just push our damage perfectly in. So that's it for Trap Dust Shoot. It just does so much work in this deck. And a friend of Trap Dust Shoot enters the fray. We have Mind Crush here. Mind Crush is extremely, extremely powerful in this deck, being able to look at their hand from the 3 Royal Tributes and the Trap Dust Shoot. Mind Crush is going to be live more times than not, and it's going to be excellent. And I think also if you're pretty versed in the Edison format, you can also blind call this card in situations where you would lose to specific things. One of the main ones being Gores. Like, there are a lot of like times where they can top deck Gores after you have Royal Tribute to them, or just that's their only out in general. Just call the Gores, take the -1 if they don't have it, and then go for an OTK push. So, or not OTK, but 6,000 or something like that. So really interesting. Mind Crush is just excellent in combination with Dust Shoot and Royal Tribute. Onto the extra deck. Just 2 copies of Stardust I'm going to show you. You can summon it off a road, but you're going to obviously want to fill out your extra deck. Don't just leave it at a couple of cards, but that's all I'm going to show you for now, just because that's all we can really summon here. Side deck, 3 copies of Vanity's Fiend. I think the responsible thing to do is to main deck this card at some number instead of like the Dark Dust Spirit and potentially the Prime Material Dragon. But I thought the main deck wanted to give a little more customizability, show that you can play a few different things in that spot. But Vanity's Fiend is likely the turn 1 thing you want to go for off of Mausoleum. But this card's really good in the side. I think you want it against decks that just can't deal with it. And yeah, a lot of decks can deal with it, but in this sort of setup where you can like Royal Tribute them, then like maybe on the following turn or already have a Vanity's Fiend, then Royal Tribute them. Just kind of insane. So card's really strong, and it's really good in combination with this strategy. I have a second Prime Material Dragon, second Dark Dust Spirit. Same idea here, just flexibility. I like Dark Dust Spirit when we're going second. It just gives us some way to come back. And same thing for the copy in the main deck. It just gives us a way to come back if we do get behind, which is very possible in this type of a deck if we're not going first. Prime Material Dragon, you can set it in going first. It's going to be fine. Second copy for that reason. And then going on to spells, we have an interesting little package with the Tribute Monsters, 2 copies of Soul Exchange, 1 copy of Brain Control. I like triple Soul Exchange in a lot of my decks, but we're not playing the Brain Control in the main. This time it's in the side. All 3 of these to take our opponent's monsters going second and just tribute for them. Tribute of Vanity's Fiend, tribute for a Ancient Gear Beast if we have to. Do anything we can to get those monsters off the board and establish control. And these cards are just really good going second, and they just do quite a lot of work. I really love Soul Exchange. The card has just been overperforming for me in like all the decks I put it in the sideboard, so really strong in combination with Vanity's Fiend and in general. I have 1 copy of Heavy Storm in the sideboard. A lot of people just set all their cards on turn 1 regardless of what they have to avoid Royal Tribute once they realize what your game plan is. This card just completely blows them out of the water, essentially just getting the other half of their hand. So very strong, and similar goes to like MST, just be able to answer problematic cards, anything that like looks like it's going to be stopping you. But yeah, this is our only trap removal. Then we have 1 copy of Zombie World, really flexible card here. We get to search off of our 3 copies of Terraforming. We want to have access to it against heavy Monarch decks. Just deny them of summoning Caius, deny them summoning Ryza. Just like anti-Monarch type card. But the ability to have 4 copies of it in your deck for 1 cost of a sideboard slot, just really powerful, and I'm definitely down with playing this. It also just helps us combo with our Gear Town stuff anyway, so Field Spell's really good, and we're going to play it. Then we have 2 copies of Skill Drain. Skill Drain's like fine. I think you could build a deck iteration of this deck that sort of just plays Skill Drain in the main, and I could see why you would go that way. I elect it in the sideboard. I think it's very good here because we want it against the decks that really get hurt by it, and that's when I really want to bring it in. Even sometimes against zombies, I don't feel like bringing it in because they have a lot of like random like turtle, like goblin stuff they can do. Sometimes even Malicious Plague can still like kind of get you with this card face up in play. So I like this card just against the decks that can't beat it. I think against Lightsworns this card is amazing. So 2 copies of Skill Drain, really powerful in the sideboard. Last couple cards here. The second copy of Oppression, same thing with the Skill Drain. We just want it against the decks that have a really hard time beating it. And the second Oppression just gives us access to it in the side. So last card, 1 Dark Bribe. Additional copy of Dark Bribe here for when we side in the Skill Drains or the second copy of Oppression. It just really protects those back rows, and with Necker Valley in play and one of those floodgates face up, the extra card just never matters in that type of position. So I think Dark Bribe is really good at solidifying those floodgate type boards with a 3000 Beast Stick in play, or even like an Ancient Gear Beast can easily seal the game. Dark Bribe is really strong in those spots. So that is about it, guys. Let me know what you guys thought about the deck in the comment section below. I like this deck quite a bit. I think it does need some work, and there's a little bit of flex spots you can kind of mess around with. But I've been liking it quite a bit. I think it's a really strong deck. I think Royal Tribute is like an insanely powerful card. And this deck can kind of just OTK the opponent out of nowhere. Like if you just straight up Royal Tribute them and then just start Gear Towning, or you Gear Town and then Royal Tribute and then like keep going afterwards. Kind of just does a lot of things. So definitely drop a comment what you guys think about the deck. Definitely let me know what you would change and how you would build the deck. Maybe drop a subscribe, and that is about it. So without further ado, this is Dan V from SSG signing out.